Hi, I'm Cheryl Duffy, divorce coach, mediator, author, and the founder of the Divorce Center. And I'm joined today with Wilks, Stepfamily Strategist. And we're going to talk today about jealousy, how jealousy shows up for stepfamilies and also for co-parents. So Ali, can you tell me, how does stepfamily get impacted by jealousy?
Well, it's a bit of a complicated kind of process because when it comes to reconfigured families or newly merged families, there's a variety of different terms for step families now. And so the dynamics can make it a little bit complicated. So especially what I, in my experience and even in the research that I do, I find that there's often where jealousy shows up is between the birth mom and the stepmom. And so that is just a situation where, oddly enough, you and I were just talking about the mom role, right? And so when it comes to moms and the mom role, it can show up there because sometimes the birth mom of the child or the main female parent, not always the birth mom, can feel a little bit protective of the stepchildren or her bio children in this case, or adoptive children. And so the stepmom also can feel a little bit jealous about the birth mom because she came first. And so the stepmom is often trying to just navigate her role and how she fits into this newly merged family. So, the parenting relationship between her partner and the mother, so whether that's the adoptive again or birth mother, they were there first. And so it's really difficult for stepmoms to find their way. So that's one of the contentious areas that jealousy can show up in blended families. The other place it can show up is between the stepmom and stepchildren. It was a bit of a personal experience for me, being a new mom or new stepmom in the picture. I found that my stepdaughter was kind of struggling with the newness of a new woman coming in, and not necessarily inserting myself, but her relationship with her dad changed because there's this new woman and new things were being influenced. And so that's another common place where jealousy can show up. And sometimes the jealousy can actually occur when the stepmom has her own children and her partner has children. And so there could be a little bit of sibling rivalry, like you would find in most, nuclear first-time non-divorced families. So, yeah, that's where those things can show up, unfortunately. And it can be a bit of a struggle for sure.
Yeah, as they're all adjusting, I'm sure, to the new.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm just going to ask you a question about jealousy for separated or divorced families. Is how does jealousy affect separated parents?
Well, when parents separate, they can feel, particularly the one that's been left, they can feel quite betrayed that the ex has already found someone so quickly. So they just feel like there's no hope for reconciliation, and it can be the old added sort of quote of, well, I don't want you, but I don't want anyone else to have you either. So there's all these emotions that are flooding through when the ex repartners, and it could have been that they repartnered during the relationship, which is really hard because then you feel quite betrayed. So it's a case of all these emotions of how it's made you feel, where you can feel quite inadequate and thinking, well, what has she got that I haven't got, or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. It's either gender. But it's a case of sometimes when people are separated and their ex has moved on so quickly, they can be thinking, hang on a minute, we're still legally married. Why do you have someone so soon when there's no chance for us to even try to get back together again? So it's that sort of finality of, okay, well, this is really happening. So that jealousy can happen because they feel that their ex has already left the relationship emotionally and started up a new relationship. So that jealousy is really, really hard to deal with.
Cheryl, I've got a little question for you that's going to I hope it's not going to throw you off too much, but I've heard this and seen this. So this is just my own curiosity question. Where when you talked about the jealousy piece of where the other person has moved on quicker, do you find that the person who is the decider of leaving, so they're the one who are saying, okay, this is not working, I think we should separate or uncouple, consciously uncouple, whatever the terminology is too nowadays, and they've already gone through kind of their grief and loss, do you think that has an impact on the other partner feeling, wow, you've kind of already moved on and so on? Does that happen? Do you find that happen? Yeah.
That's the way it happens all the time, because the one that leaves, they could have been going through that grief cycle whilst they're still in the marriage and feeling that they're trying to make it work, but nothing's working. And they finally get to the point where they've really accepted there's no future here. So they've already checked out. So they've checked out emotionally. So when they say to their spouse or their partner, I'm leaving, they're already in that acceptance phase of, I'm going to start a new life. Whereas the one that they're leaving are feeling, hang on a minute, where's this come from? And feel quite blindsided. So they can be in shock, they can be in denial. So they take much longer to get to that acceptance phase. So whilst they're going through that grief, the ex that's left and having a great old time, they can be quite jealous that that person has created this new freedom and this new happy life already.
Without them, right?
Without them,
yeah.
So how do you find that step families have been able to manage the jealousy?
And so this is what I commonly support stepmoms, the ones that I've spoken about earlier. Those are the women that I typically find. It's the stepmom, sorry, not the women, but it's the stepmom, birth mom, or main female parent that's where that jealousy occurs. So typically, I as I said, I work with the stepmoms, and so one of the first things I tell them in terms of managing it is, give yourself permission to be jealous. Name, it's kind of like that whole theory around a name it to tame it. If you're jealous but you're denying it or suppressing it, it's going to show up in some other way or form. So that's typically one of the first things that I support stepmoms to do, is to embrace that. The next thing is, if you find yourself in that situation where all of a sudden it's like a trigger kind of situation, you go to an event, for example, a sporting event, and you're both there and you're jealous of her because, she has the children and maybe you don't have there's a variety of reasons. I'm just going to back up a bit. There's a variety of reasons why people feel jealous, and a lot of that comes down to some issues around insecurities. And so I talk about, when you're in that situation, you're getting triggered, you're kind of feeling jealous, you feel that burning sensation, or however you whatever your cues are, your tells are, is just giving yourself that opportunity to kind of ground yourself, connect yourself. And it's about emotional regulation. So doing whatever you can do just to take, a breather or meditate or go for a walk, get some fresh air, just to kind of clear your head so that you can come back and not be in a reactive space. And the other thing that I do too suggest is, finding a stepmom friend or a friend. Stepmoms, I usually encourage step-parent, stepmom, stepdad relationships, because that parent then has an understanding that the other friends who are not in that situation won't necessarily understand. So I often say that it's a stepmom, other stepmoms get the stepmom experience, and same thing for stepdads. So if they can find an ally that they can share, I'm feeling jealous because my husband has had, children with this woman first, and I'm second, and dealing with all of those kinds of thought processes. And of course, if that jealousy becomes too much of a barrier in terms of having good relationships, even with your partner or with your stepchildren, or the stepchildren themselves are so jealous about the situation that it just creates barriers for healthy stepfamily relationships or happy stepfamily dynamics, then I encourage reaching out to a stepfamily coach for assistance, just to work through that.
I'm sure there's a lot of strain on the step-family relationships, having this jealousy, because the partner is already trying to deal with their own ex without the jealousy of the step-parent compounding that stress. So although it's understandable, it's a lot of stress for that person caught in the middle of these two warring women, so to speak. And it can be vice versa as well.
Absolutely.
I've come across men that, they're very jealous of a stepfather that's come in because they feel like they've been displaced. So it happens in all genders, doesn't it?
Yes. And of course, because I mostly work with stepmoms, being a female, I have worked with stepfathers, but not as often. And I've worked with step couples. But there's a lot of research, just because there's that mothering kind of, what's the word? And archetype is one of it, but there's a belief or an valuing of the mothering role that is really pronounced in family life, obviously. And so there's lots of expectations around what that's going to look like. And so that's where jealousy can show up. But I definitely, when I said that, jealousy can show up in between stepchildren and the stepmother, again, that's about displacement. And even amongst the children themselves, like, you live here with my dad, I don't get to live with my own dad. And so that's not fair. So, there can be jealousy there as well. So further to what I was saying about the jealousy of the kids with a stepmom, do separated parents get jealous of each other over the kids?
Oh, absolutely. So sometimes it's like this big competition of who's the best parent, because there's that underlying fear that if they have more fun with the other parent, or they get more toys or more gifts from the other parent, or those special holidays where they go to some fancy place, then the other parent might feel that fear that, they're going to want to be with that parent. They want to go and live there because they're having so much more fun and get more material gifts and things, that it creates this fear, this insecurity. So it's all about looking at how kids value parents and the love they have for both parents. It's not a materialistic love. So they know that if they're getting love and support, and the person that's there when they're sick, or the person that's there that when they have an exam, it's about knowing who's there for them. So it's about making sure that you don't think that love is defined by those materialistic components. And I find there's lots of parents, and we all do it when we're separated or divorced, but we can overcompensate for our kids because we think they've suffered enough with the divorce. So even discipline goes out the window, because we can think, that time that we have with them, we want it to be so precious and everyone to be happy, that we don't want to have any angst or any upset happening. So it's about making sure that you want to be able to have the kids enjoy both times with parents. So with the time with the dad and the time with the mum, just accept that the time that they're having is good for them to adjust to this new family environment, that they're thriving in two loving homes. Because if it becomes a competition between mum's house and dad's house, it's going to really create that resentment and that jealousy over what's going on in the other household, when really you should only be interested in what's going on in your own household and create that loving environment for the kids to have, you know, with you, and making sure that they feel loved and supported. Yeah, because it really impacts the separated parents and also the step families. So you go from this one family unit into two separate homes, but then you have that introduction of another family coming in, this blended family being created in one household or both. So then it really, really changes things up, where there's a lot of adjustment to be done. So with the step families, how do you prevent jealousy happening?
And when I a lot of the times I'm dealing with it after the fact, but in order to prevent the jealousy that could potentially come, so here's the other thing about the jealousy thing, is that sometimes at the beginning of relationships with the new couple, things can go very well with the children and amongst the female partners, the ex-female partner and the current one. Things can start off fairly well, and then things start to shift because it's a power differential. And so I educate a lot of the stepmoms, saying, this is great. Not that I'm planting any seeds of negativity, but here are some things for you to be aware of. So it's essentially keeping the blinders on, if you will. So if you are doing well, great, continue that as much as you can, but just be aware that there are certain situations that could potentially change down the road. The other thing that's really important, and you and I were talking about this earlier, is that there's some insecurities that can typically show up in these kinds of situations for a variety of reasons. And so working on self-care and self-awareness is also really important. And again, accepting the fact that, things are different, and education too is sharing with newly merging step families, is that it can actually take up to 7 years. So research shows that it can take up to 7 years for newer step families to feel like a cohesive unit, gelling, if you will, together. And so part of that is kind of a growth and adjustment process. So just understanding that part of that growth and merging process or adjustment process is that there's going to be some grief and loss, and grief and loss can potentially be a trigger for jealousy. So one of the other pieces that's really important in preventing that is having some open communication, having open dialogue with your partner or spouse about how, our expectations for each other. What are your expectations for me as a stepdad? What are your expectations for me as a stepmom? What do you see my role as being? Having communication around, like you said, discipline. Who's going to step in, how and when and where? And I often share and support step parents who are new to the blend. I say, really, if you can, step away from disciplining the children until you've established a relationship. So I talk about connecting with kids before you get to that stage where you're correcting them, because you really are doing a disservice to yourself if you try to parent too quickly in that adjustment process. And so if the parent is educated, there's some self-awareness, and self-care is really important in terms of ensuring that insecurity, kind of those insecurity gremlins. I think Brené Brown calls them gremlins, some insecurity gremlins. I love how she talks about it. So it's just making sure that you're taking good care of yourself, good care of your relationship, having that communication. And that's a pretty good way to prevent the jealousy. But again, you can't always prevent it, but there's ways to manage it, again, like you and I were talking about, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there'll be times as well that the nuclear family, the original family, need to be at events just them. So it could be a graduation where there's only enough tickets for the two parents to go. So there would be that to be contending with from a step parent's point of view of, well, where do I fit in? And being able to accept that there are going to be times where even the kids just want their biological parents to be at special events, and not to take it personally. Because
yes,
I think with step parents, we also have to think, now would the situation be any different if my partner was with somebody else? So it's about putting things in perspective and sort of saying, okay, is this directed at me, or would it be the same with any step parent? And if it's the same with any step parent, then we can accept it a bit better, that thinking, okay, well, this is something that is happening because they're needing to be together for this particular event. It's not because of me that they don't want me around. It would be the same if it was anybody.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you about that one. And that's, again, I'm bringing it back to, having somebody that you can vent to or express your jealousy towards, that's going to understand you, because they can normalize that what you're feeling is normal, and it's okay to be jealous depending on how you behave when you're feeling jealous. And so that's why I suggested, go blow off some steam, do the emotional regulation where you're doing some grounding and some deep grounding and pressing the reset button, whatever that looks like to you. So absolutely. So this is something I've often heard of and often thought of as well, just by watching some post separation dynamics and so this is tying into the question that I have for you. How does it go? It's something along the lines of the best revenge is a best lived life.
Absolutely.
Post-divorce. Yeah. Absolutely. So tying the question, is there jealousy of that ex's lifestyle?
Absolutely. So I'm seeing so often, because the person that leaves has this newfound freedom, and so they're transforming themselves and their lives. So you'll see that they can even look better than they did before. They're happier. So it can even trigger how you used to feel about them when you first met, because they're looking great, they're happy and joyful. And so therefore you sort of are seeing someone that's transformed, and he or she is really, really happy. But sometimes we can feel jealous about that because we're not happy. We're the ones that have been left. Our world's turned upside down. And so we can be thinking, how can they be happy? Why are they happy? And I'm not. I deserve to be happy too. So they can be very, very jealous about that new freedom and the fun that they see their ex having. And their ex may be doing all the things that they are passionate about in life that they never got to do when they were married. So they might be taking up hobbies that they never did when they were married, and they might even change career, and they might be really transforming their life and living their full potential, and you might feel a bit as though you're left behind, and that your life is stagnant, your life is ruined. So therefore it's really, really important to be able to focus on your healing and letting go and moving on, so that you're able to transform yourself and your life. If you keep focusing and consuming yourself over what's going on in your ex's life, you will not be in a ready state to transform your life. So it's this being stuck, being this prisoner to your past, as I mentioned before, that if you don't look to the future and the possibilities it holds for you, you can't sort of be jealous about your partner having this happy life if you're going to stay in this purgatory, this post-divorce purgatory, whereby you're never going to be able to move on until you're actually ready for change for yourself and be able to create that new happy life. So it's really, really important.
There was another quote that I saw not long ago that ties right into this jealousy over the ex's lifestyle, is that, and then even jealousy in the stepfamily life as well, is that, comparison is the stealer of joy.
Oh, absolutely.
And I So that just really resonates with what you were just saying, but also it kind of clicked in. Well, that's exactly what's going on in the step family dynamics, is that, the birth mom or the main female caregiver and then the new stepmom can absolutely, it's that whole comparison thing. Well, they can afford the fancy vacations to Mexico, or, I guess in Australia it's Bali, right? Bali is
some places.
Australian version of Mexico, I've heard. Is that true?
Probably, yes.
So, I mean, they can afford the fancy trips, but, we're here scrimping and saving. So, that's kind of a key door, if you will, to open up for the jealousy, right?
And it builds resentment. So when we're resentful of our ex's life, we can actually be feeling quite disappointed that they're not falling apart like we are, that they're not, they're going on with their life coping and we're not coping. So we can really feel disappointed that they're not missing us, they haven't fallen in a heap because they're without us. So we can really be feeling that jealousy of them being able to move on and our lives feel shattered. So it's a case of really needing to have that self-awareness of what's going on for us, because if we sit in that bitterness and resentfulness, it's going to spiral us into depression, and it's much harder then to move out of that to create that happy life. So it's really important to get to that acceptance phase of making sure that we understand, our marriage or our relationship is over. Now it's my time to be able to build a life that I want and I deserve.
Absolutely. There's so many things like you were sharing about this jealousy theme that I thought of when my husband was sharing his story post-divorce, and how you said that as soon as they start dating somebody else, then the person who split initially said, well, I don't want you, but she can't have you or he can't have you. And that's exactly what happened in my husband's situation. And and then my brothers who have gone through the divorce, you're kind of speaking the language that they shared about, well, why didn't you put in all that effort to go to the gym and change your job when you were married to me? That's what I wanted you to do. Why didn't you put the effort in then? Because maybe we wouldn't be divorced, kind of that whole rational thinking and jealousy for sure. Yeah.
All such these a good conversation. What if and if onlys.
Absolutely. And again, that can steal your joy, right? Where's your power? Where's your power in this moment? And definitely, that's where your work comes in, is supporting those couples, or the person to not go down that path of depression and whatnot, right? So
very self-destructive. So you have to take your power back, because if you consume yourself with your ex's life, you're handing them that power. They have power over you. So it's really important to take your power back, because although that ex is no longer in your life, it is not a reflection on you, because a lot of times they haven't left you because of you. They've left because they weren't happy with their life. They may not have achieved what they wanted to in life. They may be having a midlife crisis thinking, is this it? I need some fun and excitement in my life. But it's not necessarily about you. It's that they need to have an escape from their stagnant life. So that's why they're wanting to leave and create a new life for themselves. So it's about, once again, I know it's hard to accept, but it's about not taking it personally, because we're all responsible for our own happiness. No one else is going to have that responsibility. And if we put that responsibility onto someone else, we're forever going to be disappointed. So we really need to be making sure we own making sure we're happy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that I work on with stepmoms as well, is don't allow the people outside of you, stepchildren or the birth or the bio mom, the ex, be the determinant of how happy you're going to be. Yeah, taking your power back. Absolutely. That's so powerful. Yeah.
Because the problem is, if you become really jealous, unhappy, is going to push your partner away if it's a step family situation. So if they've got this partner who is jealous, this new step parent who's jealous, who's unhappy, then they're going to feel, they're not going to want to be around you. They'll start working back later because they think, oh, when I get home, that's just going to be misery. So there's a lot of people that, I work with, even with marital mediation, where if the person that they're trying to have a relationship with is so unhappy and just so disconnected, it's really hard to be able to do that. So if we own our own happiness, to make sure that we are making it our job to make ourselves happy, then we're going to be able to deal with anything else that comes along, because we're going to be in a state of mind that's going to be strong enough to cope with that. Whereas if we allow it to take over us, we're just going to plummet into this negativity, which is not nice for anyone to be around.
No, and that was something that I was thinking of earlier, is that not only do you want to work on your own personal stuff and not let jealousy consume you, you want to do it for yourself, but you also want to do it for your kids, right? If you're the biological or adoptive or whatever parent, you really got to do that for your kids and for your next set of relationships, right? You've got to end wrap that relationship up. It doesn't have to be a pretty bow, but you really do owe it to yourself to clear that baggage out before you go into the step family relationship, right? The next relationship. Because if you're carrying that in there with you, you're just kind of dirtying this new relationship that you have. Absolutely. So there's that spillover from one family to the next, and you don't want to carry that kind of negativity and that burdening with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we could talk about jealousy for ever. There's so much.
You can talk about all these topics that you've identified, and it was like, oh yeah, that's so good. So good. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Cheryl.
That's okay. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about jealousy in step families and co-parents, because I think it's really important for people to gain an understanding from both sides of what happens in these relationships going forward.